Part 56. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 551. I instantly understood what Su Tianqian meant. The mission Ghost Lord was sealed in the corpse coffin, and Zhong Zhengling's purpose was to prevent him from coming out. Zhong Zhengling's purpose is the same as mine. Zhong Zhengling was silent for a moment and said, "That's okay." He turned his head, looked at me and said, "I will come to you in the evening." After that, Zhong Zhengling stood up and left. Su Tianqian stood up and came to my side and said, "Xiao Su, come here, I have something to tell you." I nodded and followed Su Tianqian to the second floor. She took me to the room dedicated to Master Zhang. Su Tianqian looked at the portrait of Master Zhang and said to me, "Xiao Su, this matter is not as simple as you think. You go and capture those 4 ghosts with Zhong Zhengling first, and then I go to mission to attend the Lucian festival." I looked at Su Tianxuan's back and asked, "Master, I always feel that there is something wrong with the Lucian festival this time. It is impossible that mission didn't know that the corpse coffin was here, but they didn't stop it, but they went to hold the Lucian festival. In the final analysis, Mission Ghost Lord is the evil cult of Mission. As a major sect in the world, Mission has been responsible for slaying demons since ancient times. Their sect should send people to solve it instead of letting 2 outsiders, Zhong Zhengling and me, handle it." Su Tianqian turned around, looked at me deeply, and said, "Your worries are not unreasonable, but I must go to mission this time." Su Tianxuan's beautiful eyes were filled with determination. She turned around, took off the portrait of Zhang Tianqi from the top, then carefully rolled it up and handed it to my hand. "If you hold this portrait, it will save your life in times of crisis." I took the portrait, looked at Su Tianqian, opened my mouth, and said, "Master, be careful." Su Tianqian nodded, raised the corners of his mouth and eyebrows slightly, and said, "You can handle many things now, but I still have to tell you a few words, don't show off or be reckless." Su Tianqian looked at me with eyes full of relief. I didn't say anything, always feeling that something bad would happen to Su Tianqian when he went to mission this time. Su Tianqian said to me again, "There is also that crow. You can find a way to keep it by your side for now. Maybe it can help you in the future." I nodded and said nothing more. At noon, Su Tianqian and Su Xian left Ji Yuntang together. Before leaving, I repeatedly told Su Tianqian to be careful, but Su Tianqian just smiled and said nothing more. After Su Tianqian left, the crow kept screaming. I came to it and asked, "What are you calling?" The crow looked at me with its round black eyes and said, "I have something to tell you." "What's the matter?" "Then after I tell you, you have to release me." I rolled my eyes and threatened, "If you don't tell me, I'll have to eat extra tonight." "You." Crow sighed and said, "Forget it, it doesn't hurt to tell you." "Who made that female bodhisattva treat me so well?" "Miao Fengluan is kind-hearted and takes great care of this crow. Basically, Miao Fengluan will satisfy any request this crow has." I saw the Taoist priest who came this morning. I was slightly stunned and motioned for the crow to continue. It was at the mass grave that the Taoist priest talked with the blood coffin for a while. I only heard 4 words, which seemed to be some kind of Lucian Daijiao. When I heard this, my expression changed slightly. It seems that this matter is correct as I guessed. As expected, the mission Ghost Lord was planning to hold the Lucian Daijiao. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 552. Then why didn't you say anything just now? Aren't I afraid of being discovered by that old man? I was speechless for a moment and ignored the crow. I suddenly remembered something, turned around, and asked Miao Fengluan next to me, "Where is Mr. Ghost? Why didn't you see him?" Miao Fengluan was stunned for a moment, and then her expression became a little gloomy. She replied, "I left a few days ago. When I asked him what he was doing, He didn't tell me. He just said a lot of incomprehensible things to me. What words? Miao Fengluan lowered his eyes and murmured in a low voice, he told me that he might not be by my side in the future. He asked me to stay by your side. He trusts you. Miao Fengluan raised her head, her star-like eyes full of worry. She stretched out her hand, gently held my hand, and said, Lu Su, will something happen to him? Why do I always feel that I will never be here again? I can't see him anymore. I fell silent. Master Gui and I have never known each other before. After such a long period of contact, we both regard each other as best friends. Before, Master Gui would say such confusing things to me. I knew that he had a burden on his shoulders that I didn't know about, and he didn't tell me because he was afraid of hurting me, but I didn't expect that he would leave without saying goodbye. I gently rubbed Miao Fengluan's soft, boneless hands and said comfortingly, don't worry, he will come back. If there is no news about him after a while, I will go find him. Miao Fengluan nodded heavily. In the evening, Zhong Zhenling arrived as scheduled. Benefactor, where are we going? I asked. Zhong Zhenling replied, we are going to the Sanking Taoist temple on the outskirts of the city to find out some information. I nodded, packed up, and headed to Sanking Taoist temple with Zhong Zhenling. But just when I was about to leave Jiyuntang, the crow kept cawing. Take me with you. I don't want to stay here anymore. I looked back at the crow in the cage and refused without thinking. You'd better stay here. The crow suddenly became unhappy. It flashed its wings and shouted at Miao Fengluan, female bodhisattva. Please intercede with me. Ah, Miao Fengluan was slightly startled, stretched out her finger and asked, me? Yes. Tell him quickly, I won't run away. After all, there is no kinder female bodhisattva than you in this world. Miao Fengluan came to me and said, Lu Su, just take him with you, he won't escape. I looked at the crow, hesitated for a moment, came to the birdcage, and asked, for Miao Fengluan's sake, I'll let you out. You have to know that others can't catch you, but I didn't say anything further, thinking that the crow would understand. With Juyan Tianyu here, wouldn't it be easy to catch it? The crow nodded repeatedly and agreed, okay, okay. I won't run away. I'm still waiting to come back to eat meat. At this time, I didn't know that Miao Fengluan had already conquered this cheap crow with his kindness. I told Miao Fengluan to stay in Jiyuntang and to find Huaxiu if anything happened. Miao Fengluan obediently agreed, and then Zhong Zhenling and I left Jiyuntang. Zhong Zhenling and I took a taxi to the Sanking Taoist temple in the northern suburbs, and the crow rested quietly on my shoulder. Soon, Zhong Zhenling and I arrived in the northern suburbs. There is a Sanking temple here which is very famous in Tianfu City and almost everyone knows about it. When I got out of the taxi, a gust of cold air blew in my face, and I shuddered subconsciously. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 553. Tonight is another dark night, the moon in the sky seems to have changed color, the world has become pitch black, only a few stars are still trying to shine a little faint light. The howling night wind blew the trees on one side, and the leaves were flying and making a sound. The leaves projected on the ground were like ferocious evil spirits. Zhong Zhenling and I walked along the country road in the direction of the Taoist temple. As I walked, I noticed a touch of burnt yellow out of the corner of my eye. I was stunned for a moment, stopped, bent down to the bush, stretched out my hand and rummaged through it. Zhong Zhenling also stopped and looked at me with some confusion. I stood up with a piece of yellow paper in my hand. The first thought I had when I saw this piece of yellow paper was that someone had died. When Zhong Zhenling saw the yellow paper in my hand, his expression became a little ugly. Hurry up, something happened to the Taoist temple. I threw away the yellow paper, followed Zhong Zhenling, and walked quickly towards the Taoist temple. Soon, a Taoist temple came into my sight. The Taoist temple is not big, hidden under a few vigorous ginkgo trees, and looks a bit eerie under the moonlight. In the Taoist temple, it was pitch black without any light. At this moment, a faint cry came from the direction of the Taoist temple. I pricked up my ears and listened carefully, and sure enough, someone was crying. The sound of crying was so ethereal that the listeners could not help but feel sad. Oh my God! This cry scares the birds. The crow couldn't help but murmur on my shoulder. I glared at it fiercely, and then looked at Zhong Zhenling. He was looking forward at the moment, with an unprecedented seriousness in his eyes. "Let's go," he said to me. I nodded and continued walking towards the Taoist temple. As we moved forward, the crying in our ears became clearer and clearer. Woo-oh! The crying sound changed from sobbing at the beginning to a roaring and harsh roar now, which made me feel a little numb. Soon, we saw the gate of the Taoist temple, but Zhong Zhenling and I stopped at the same time. Because I saw a dark shadow in front of the Taoist temple. The outline of the shadow doesn't look like a human, but looks like a dog. At this moment, the crying stopped suddenly, and the black shadow slowly turned around. Then, I saw a pair of eyes with red eyes. I subconsciously picked up Leju and stared at the black shadow. Suddenly, the black shadow rushed out of the darkness. Through the moonlight, I could clearly see the true appearance of the black shadow. It turned out to be a real dog. A big black wolf dog. The black dog rushed straight towards me and Zhong Zhenling, opened its bloody mouth and bit me. My expression condensed, I raised my foot and kicked him over. This kick directly kicked the black dog away. It got up from the ground and roared at me, its eyes full of vigilance. I took a step forward to drive the black dog away. But just when I took out my right foot, the black dog burrowed into the bushes on the side and disappeared. How is this going? Zhong Zhenling came to the gate of the Taoist temple in one stride, stretched out his hand and pushed the gate open. I quickly followed him. When I saw the situation in the Taoist temple, I was stunned for a moment. I saw that the Taoist temple was covered with white mourning flags, and there was a mourning hall in the middle, but there was no coffin in the mourning hall. Zhong Zhenling whispered, "The black dog is crying, now we are in trouble." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a man wearing mourning clothes walking out of the Taoist temple. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 554. The man was about the same age as me, with a smooth and fair face, a cold and angular face, and a haggard look in his deep black eyes. "Who are you two looking for?" the man asked. Zhong Zhenling focused his gaze on the mourning hall and asked, "Where is Taoist Master Xiancheng?" The man was stunned for a moment, then a trace of sadness appeared on his brows. He lowered his eyes and replied, "My master passed away a few days ago." Zhong Zhengling's dark pupils trembled violently. After a while, he let out a long sigh and said nothing. The man invited Zhong Zhenling and me into the Taoist temple, and then made tea and water for the two of us. Through chatting, I learned that the man's name was Tao Wen, and he was a direct disciple of Xiancheng, the elder of Mission. He has lived here with Taoist Master Xiancheng since he was a child, slaying demons and solving people's doubts. At this time, I suddenly thought of what I had just experienced at the gate of the Taoist temple. There are many folk taboos. One of them fits exactly what happened just now. The black dog cries in mourning. If you encounter a black dog crying and digging a hole, it also means that either someone in the family has just died, or someone in the family must be mourning in the next few days, that is, someone must die before or after, or a pregnant woman must have a miscarriage. I told Tao Wen what had just happened. Tao Wen was stunned for a moment after hearing this, and then said that he had heard nothing in the Taoist temple just now. As he spoke, the expression on Tao Wen's face froze instantly. As if he thought of something terrible, he stood up suddenly and ran towards the outside of the Taoist temple. Zhong Zhenling and I looked at each other and quickly followed him. Tao Wen explained to us as he ran, "The black dog is crying, my master's grave must have been dug up by the black dog. I must go and see." These two taboos happened one after another. First there were black dogs crying in mourning, and then there were black dogs digging at the grave. Once these two events happen, terrible things will definitely happen. Tao Wen ran non-stop towards the mountains, followed closely by Zhong Zhenling and me. Entering Chongshan, along the winding path, we came to a cemetery. The night was as dark as ink, the moonlight poured down, and the hill-like tombs stood quietly not far away. Swish swish. Suddenly there was a slight rustling sound in my ears. Tao Wen's expression changed drastically and he ran towards the tomb. When we got closer to the tomb and took a look, we were stunned on the spot. I saw a dozen big black wolf dogs around the grave mound frantically digging at the grave. Tao Wen stepped forward to drive him away, but was met with an angry look from the black dog. The black dog roared like a beast, its eyes flashing with blood-red bloodlust. Tao Wen picked up a wooden stick and started wrestling with the black dogs. Zhong Zhenling and I quickly stepped forward to help. Zhong Zhenling twitched the long knife from his waist, and with a flash of light, a black dog was killed. Seeing this, I stretched out my right hand, held it in the air, and a shining golden heart sword appeared in my hand. These black dogs are extremely ferocious and have no fear of our attacks. Some even ignored our attacks and jumped into the coffin frantically biting at it. It took a lot of effort to kill these black dogs. Scarlet blood splashed everywhere, looking particularly eerie under the moonlight. The three of us came to the grave pit and looked at the coffin inside the grave pit. I saw that the complete coffin had been torn open by black dogs. When Tao Wen saw this scene, he fell to his knees and shouted towards the coffin, "Master! The apprentice is unfilial." At this time, I suddenly caught a glimpse of the tombstone lying on the ground out of the corner of my eye. There was a portrait of Taoist Master Xiancheng on the tombstone. I stepped forward to check it. It didn't matter. I was stunned for a moment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 555. The portrait shows an old man wearing Taoist robes. The old man has silver hair and a kind face, making him approachable at first glance. However, I have seen this face before. He was one of the 4 ghost Taoist priests who carried the coffin at the mass grave that day. At this moment, Tao Wen's exclamation came from behind me. I quickly came to the grave and looked at the coffin in the grave. There was nothing inside, no signs of corpses anywhere. I quickly called Tao Wen up and told him everything that happened at the mass grave that day. Tao Wen couldn't help but tremble when he heard that the corpse coffin had appeared. Zhong Zhenling asked from the side, "The master we came to see you today is here to inquire about the coffin. If I remember correctly, in order to suppress the coffin, Mission sent 4 elders, captured 4 evil ghosts, and raised the coffin with their evil spirits. Now that the coffin has appeared, the 4 evil ghosts have also been born. Think about it. Of the 4 elders in Mission, only your master is still alive, so it seems we are a step too late." Tao Wen nodded, looked at Zhong Zhenling and said, "My master has mentioned this matter to me." Hearing Tao Wen say this, I suddenly became interested. Tao Wen glanced at the grave pit behind him, let out a long sigh, and said, "At that time, there was such an evil way in Mission, and Mission couldn't defeat it despite all its efforts. If it hadn't been for Yunziazi's help later, I'm afraid the entire Mission 1,000-year-old foundations will be destroyed in one day. It's Yunziazi again. It seems that Mission Ghost Lord and Tian Coffin are inseparable. Yunziazi helped us seal the Ghost King in the corpse coffin. Later, he told my master to find the 4 fierce ghosts, Yaksha, Rakshasa, demon, and use their souls to seal the coffin. Later, my master teamed up with the other 3 elders to search for these 4 ghosts. Finally, they found them all, and then they used all the strength of 9 cows and 2 tigers to imprison these 4 ghosts. Hearing this, I felt a chill in my heart. These 4 ghosts were not simple. Each one taken individually has hundreds or thousands of years of Taoism. Zhong Zhenling nodded after hearing this and said, "Do you know where those 4 ghosts are now?" Tao Wen shook his head and replied, "I don't know now, but there is a magic weapon in the Taoist temple that can detect their location. If you want to prevent the corpse coffin from being opened, you must find the 4 ghosts and eliminate them. If those 4 fierce ghosts were found by the Mission Ghost Lord, the consequences would be disastrous." The 3 of us repaired the tomb of Taoist Master Xiancheng a little, and then walked in the direction of the Taoist temple. On the way, Tao Wen also revealed some news to us. That is, the entire Tianfu city is actually a natural place for souls and corpses. At that time, when the 4 elders of Mission sealed the 4 fierce ghosts, they also sealed hundreds of ghosts in every corner of Tianfu city. Once those 4 evil ghosts gather together, then the entire Tianfu city will be full of ghosts walking at night, and there will be no peace. Zhong Zhenling lowered his head and remained silent. After a while, he raised his head and said, "If things really get to that bad stage, I will do my best to protect all the people in Tianfu city." As early as the first time I met Zhong Zhenling, I knew that he was an upright person who took the world as his own responsibility. Soon, we saw the Taoist temple. At this time, the sky suddenly became dense with dark clouds, the bright moon disappeared into the clouds, and the surrounding vision suddenly became dim. The crow landed on my shoulder, and he whispered to me, "Let's go another way, there is a very scary guy in front of us." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 556. Since entering the Taoist temple, this annoying crow seems to have been pressed on the mute button and has not said a word. Now he suddenly spoke to persuade me to leave. I looked at the crow on my shoulder and asked, "What's in front of me?" The crow's 2 dark eyes looked forward and replied, "Just now I saw in the sky not far away a woman carrying a tombstone." "The woman carrying a tombstone?" Crow continued, "That woman is very scary. The yin energy exuding from her makes me so scared." The 3 of us looked at each other and saw seriousness in each other's eyes. The crows started chattering in my ears again. "Brother, give me a hug. I'm so scared." I rolled my eyes and yelled at the crow. The crow shrank its head, and then moved a little closer to me. Without any hesitation, the 3 of us rushed in the direction of the Taoist temple. Passing by a small forest, the gate of the Taoist temple came into view. The surroundings were deathly silent, and no sound could be heard. Looking around, he did not find the woman carrying the tombstone that the crow said. I know that although this crow is mean-mouthed, it can't lie. There must be some potential danger around here. We paused for a moment, and Tao Wen said to Zhong Zhenling and me, "You guys wait here for me, I'll get the magic weapon." I hesitated and said, "We'd better go with you." Tao Wen nodded. The 3 of us returned to the Taoist temple again. Tao Wen entered the Taoist temple and then knelt down in front of the statue of Sanking with a common voice. He clasped his hands together and muttered words. If you listen carefully, he was praying. After praying, Tao Wen stood up and found some incense, lit it, and respectfully placed it in the incense burner. Then he knelt in front of the statue of Sanking and continued to pray. At this moment, I suddenly felt a cold air coming from behind. I turned around and looked behind me, but there was nothing. Just when I was about to take back the realization, I suddenly glanced at the door of the Taoist temple from the corner of my eye. Just now, there seemed to be a pale ghost face flashing past. I hesitated for a moment and walked towards the outside of the Taoist temple. When I just stepped out of the threshold, a pale grimace suddenly appeared out of thin air. That ghostly face was so close to me that I was almost touching that face. I was startled and retreated. Looking outside the Taoist temple, he found that the grimace had disappeared again. My expression froze, and this fierce ghost actually started playing hide and seek with me. I took a deep breath and walked outside the Taoist temple. I stood at the door of the Taoist temple and looked around, but I didn't find anything unusual. I turned around to leave, but at this moment, a sudden stinging pain came from the skin on my left arm. I picked up the Thunder Jew seal, turned around and hit it to the left. The moment I raised my hand, thunder and lightning instantly spread to my entire palm, and there was a faint rumble of thunder in the air. Boom! Thunder and lightning exploded, sending a black figure flying backwards. I quickly distanced myself from him and looked closely, only to see a woman in a blood-red dress being knocked to the ground by me. I summoned my heart sword and stared at the woman closely. The woman stood up slowly, then groped around and put a tombstone on her back. The heavy tombstone bent the woman's waist, like a rickety old lady. Moreover, I always feel that the tombstone behind the woman looks familiar. I seem to have seen it somewhere. I suddenly remembered, isn't this the tombstone of Taoist Xian Cheng? Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 557. Since I had just noticed this tombstone, I was very impressed with it. I can be 100% sure that the tombstone that the woman is carrying on her back belongs to Taoist Xian Cheng. The woman's face was pale and her eyes were ashen. She looked at me as if she were staring at a dead object. The yin energy emanating from her whole body is very powerful, making people feel an invisible sense of oppression. The corners of the woman's mouth raised slightly, revealing an eerie smile. She disappeared instantly, too fast to be caught with the naked eye. But the moment the woman disappeared, the skin on my back suddenly felt a tingling pain. I turned around suddenly and saw the woman carrying the tombstone coming up behind me. She opened her mouth wide and bit me. My expression condensed, and I quickly placed my heart sword in front of me. Hearing a clanging sound, the woman's bloody mouth bit down hard on the sword in her heart. Seeing this scene, I couldn't help but feel chilled. If it weren't for the stinging pain from my back, I might have been bitten off my head by the woman. The two reactions on my skin made me realize something. Since the last time my body's skin was strange, I have felt that my body's perception of yin energy has become a little stronger. This should be the ability of body awareness, but I think the ability of body awareness is not as simple as perception. You know, I thought the netherworld ghost sea was controlling shadows at first. The woman bit the heart sword tightly and refused to let go. I wanted to pull the heart sword back, but I found that the biting force of the woman's mouth was simply too strong. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull the heart sword out. I raised my foot and kicked the woman in the stomach. This foot was firmly placed on the woman's belly. The woman didn't fly backwards as I expected. Instead, I felt a sharp pain in my feet. It was like being kicked on an iron plate. At this moment, the woman's lower abdomen slowly collapsed, wrapping my legs like a quagmire. I quickly pulled my foot back, but had no choice but to give up the heart sword. I waved my hand casually, and two blank golden heavenly secrets appeared between my eyebrows. I picked up the sword Jew and drew the fire talisman and the earth talisman. The two talismans were superimposed one after another. I shouted loudly, and a dazzling golden light burst out from the talisman. Then the surrounding temperature suddenly rose, and the scorching fire wrapped around the rock and blasted towards the woman. In an instant, dust and smoke were flying everywhere. Taking this opportunity, I quickly retracted my heart sword and distanced myself from him. I stared closely at the woman's figure in the smoke. Suddenly, the smoke began to flow. The next second, the woman rushed out of the smoke, stretched out her pale hands and struck towards my heart. I was shocked. Neither the heart sword nor the 5 elements talisman could hurt this female ghost. So, how powerful must her Taoism be? Seeing that there was no way to avoid it, I opened my 9 eyes and disappeared instantly. When I reappeared, I was already behind the female ghost. I picked up the 9-layer thunder technique and superimposed the thunder technique to the 3rd layer. Then he used his soul-stealing blood hand, and the scarlet blood instantly dyed the thunder and lightning red. I raised my right hand, which was flashing with blood-colored thunder and lightning, and struck hard at the female ghost's heart. Although there are tombstones to resist it, I can completely move it away with the ability of 9 Eyes Heaven Realm. With a bang, the tombstone disappeared and fell to the ground not far away. Then there was another popping sound. Bloody thunder and lightning exploded, and my hand penetrated the female ghost's chest. The female ghost stiffened, and then her head turned 180 degrees. She stared at me with a pair of dead gray eyes. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 558. I was completely stunned by the power of the female ghost. The heart sword, the fire talisman, the wood talisman, the soul-stealing ghost hand, can't cause any harm to her. What kind of existence is this guy? The corners of the female ghost's mouth raised slightly, revealing a ferocious smile. Her neck stretched out in an instant, her mouth opened wide, and she bit my neck with her sharp fangs. I looked stern, and an invisible barrier isolated the female ghost. I used all my strength to pull my hand out. But the flesh and blood in the female ghost's lower abdomen was like a big mouth, biting my right hand tightly and refusing to let go. I can only use the power of the 9 Eyes heavenly domain to transfer my entire body. Suddenly, I disappeared from the spot in an instant. I distanced myself and looked at the female ghost warily. This female ghost is very difficult to deal with. But it's not impossible to deal with it, because I found that the bloody lightning just now had an effect on her. In this case, I took a deep breath and used the power of my left eye. In an instant, the ink-colored darkness took shape instantly, churning like a sea, and the sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling appeared out of thin air, ringing in my ears. I stretched out my right hand, and scarlet blood instantly spread to my right arm, and then the scarlet blood floated into the air. Then it merged into the ghost sea at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, the dark sea of ghosts was dyed red with blood. Immediately afterwards, Yin soldiers wearing armor slowly emerged from the sea of blood, and their armor was dyed red with blood. The sea of blood surged and instantly enveloped the female ghost. The female ghost fights with the Yin soldiers in the sea of blood. The Netherworld Ghost Sea has the ability to devour powerful ghosts, and every time it swallows a powerful ghost, the scope of the Netherworld Ghost Sea will be expanded. In the same way, more Yin soldiers will be summoned. I didn't sit still and waited for death. I concentrated my mind and summoned the fairy sword. I raised my sword and rushed towards the female ghost. At the same time, I summoned a blank heavenly secret. With the thought, a fire talisman was drawn. The heart sword pierced the fire talisman, and the fierce fire instantly enveloped the heart sword. In the blink of an eye, I arrived in front of the female ghost, raised the flaming heart sword in my hand, and struck at the female ghost's neck. With a clang, the sword of the heart collided hard with the female ghost's neck. Even with the blessing of the fire talisman, I still couldn't hurt the female ghost. At this time, I suddenly remembered what Wei Zheng said to me. The strength of the heart sword depends on the true intention of the sword holder. When I killed the dragon, I was determined to die. But now? No. I can't do this. My expression condensed, and I exerted force on my hands, and soon I heard the sound of the sea of ghosts churning in my ears. I saw the blood-colored sea of ghosts surge up behind me like a tsunami, lingering around me as if there was life. With a puff, the heart sword sank into the female ghost's neck. At this moment, the female ghost suddenly burst out with a heart-rending roar. Immediately afterwards, her body began to change. Her hair began to emit green flames, several feet high, burning like a candle. One of his eyes is on the top of his head, and the other on his chin. They are oddly shaped, some are triangular, and some are half-moon shaped. Two huge wings slowly sprouted from her back, and her body kept changing, sometimes turning into a human body with an animal head, a cow's head, or a horse's head. In short, it was terrifying. Seeing the female ghost like this, my brain buzzed. The identity of the female ghost is indeed not simple. It turned out to be Yaksha, one of the 4 fierce ghosts. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 559. I once had a book dedicated to recording the evil ghosts in this world in the bookstore on the 2nd floor of Jiyuntang. Among them, Yaksha's appearance is exactly the same as that of the fierce ghost in front of him. Yakshas can be roughly divided into 3 types. One type has double wings on its ribs and can fly in the air. It is called the flying Yaksha, or the empty Yaksha. One that can fly into the ground and has sharp claws is called a Yaksha. There is another type that can move through water, which is called the water-moving Yaksha. Obviously, the Yaksha in front of me has all the characteristics of the above 3 kinds of Yaksha. No wonder my attack couldn't hurt him at all. Yasha waved his wings and flew into the sky. I raised my hand suddenly, and the sea of ghosts instantly rose up and attacked towards Yasha. The ghost sea is like a huge blood-red ghost hand, firmly grasping Yaksha's feet. The Yin soldiers took advantage of the situation, marched on the sea of blood, and surrounded Yaksha. Then the Yin soldier swung the long knife in his hand and slashed at Yaksha. Now that we meet Yaksha here, we can't let him go. At this moment, dull footsteps suddenly came from behind me. I turned around and saw that it was Zhong Zhengling and Tao Wen. Quack, quack. Master Bird has brought the rescuers to save you. The crows circled in the air and quacked triumphantly. Zhong Zhengling came to my side, looked up at Yasha in the sky, his expression was condensed, and without any hesitation, he twitched the long sword from his waist. In an instant, a cold light flashed, and Zhong Zhengling jumped up, raised the long sword in his hand, and slashed hard at Yasha. With a clang, the long knife struck Yaksha firmly on the head. Like me, Zhong Zhengling's attack had no effect. Seeing that he was about to fall, I quickly controlled the sea of ghosts to catch him. This way, he can have a place to stay. Zhong Zhengling held the sword formula with his left hand and muttered something in his mouth. He suddenly stretched out his left hand, placed his middle and index fingers gently on the sword body, and then slowly slid the sword tip to the tail. In an instant, a beam of golden light burst out from the long sword, and countless golden spells spread and climbed to the entire long sword. Zhong Zhengling swung his sword again and struck at Yasha's neck. Yasha seemed to feel the danger, and quickly dodged sideways. The long sword slashed Yasha's ugly cheek, and scarlet blood slid down the tip of the sword. I was slightly startled when I saw this scene. Zhong Zhengling must have used some means to make the sword sharper. Yasha roared and broke free from the shackles of the ghost sea. She flapped her wings and flew high into the sky, looking down at the 3 of us. Zhong Zhengling landed firmly and looked up at Yasha hovering in the air. He looked serious and thought about how to get Yasha down. I directly expanded the scope of the 9 Eyes Heaven realm and enveloped Yaksha within it. I put the realization on Yaksha's shoulders, and then my body flashed and disappeared in an instant. When he appeared again, he had already stepped on Yasha's shoulder. This sudden scene made Zhong Zhengling and Tao Wen dumbfounded, and even the crow couldn't help shouting at the side. "Damn! You're so handsome! I was able to kill the dragon at an altitude of several thousand meters, and now it was no problem to shoot down the yaksha. I stepped on yaksha's shoulders with my feet, and before she could react, I clenched the hilt of the heart sword with both hands, and then stabbed yaksha's head hard. With a clang, the heart sword failed to pierce yaksha's head, but the huge force directly knocked yaksha from mid-air to the ground. My heart trembled, and I activated the soul-stealing blood hand, and the scarlet blood soaked the heart sword. With a pop, the heart sword was firmly inserted into Yasha's head. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 560. Blood splattered everywhere, and Yasha let out a heart-rending scream. When Yaksha and I landed, Zhong Zhengling was already in front of us, and he stabbed Yaksha between the eyebrows with a long sword. Just when the sword was about to penetrate Yaksha's head, a black magic circle suddenly appeared in front of Yaksha. The magic circle took on the shape of Bagua and moved slowly. When Zhong Zhengling's long sword touched the magic circle, it could no longer move forward. Immediately afterwards, a powerful and suffocating yin qi erupted around him. When Tao Wen saw the black magic circle, he was stunned on the spot and immediately looked around in panic. "Master!" Tao Wen shouted into the darkness. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure slowly walked out of the darkness. The cold moonlight shone on his body, and I was stunned when I saw the face of the visitor. Taoist Master Xiancheng. He was still wearing the same black robe that day at the mass grave. I couldn't see any human expression on his face, only a dead gray and numbness, just like a walking corpse. Taoist priest Xiancheng walked slowly toward us. "Master!" Tao Wen wanted to rush up and see his master, but I reached out to stop him. I shook my head at him and said, "That's not your master." Tao Wen was slightly startled and looked at Taoist Xiancheng. He also realized something was wrong. Zhong Zhengling retracted his sword and looked at Taoist Xiancheng coldly. Taoist priest Xiancheng said nothing and continued to walk towards us. Zhong Zhengling looked a little serious. He turned to me and said, "You guys find a way to get out of here." "Leave." "Why leave? You are no match for him." Zhong Zhengling stared at Taoist Xiancheng closely. "But, we can help you," I said. Zhong Zhengling shook his head and replied, "You can't do it. Taoist Master Xiancheng is extremely powerful. Now he has been turned into a zombie and is directly controlled by the Ghost Lord. Therefore, his strength is many times stronger than before." Taoist Master Xiancheng was turned into a zombie. However, Taoist Master Xiancheng looks like a zombie. At this moment, Taoist Master Xiancheng suddenly stretched out his hand towards me, and a tyrannical force spread from the magic circle in front of Yasha, knocking me away directly. I steadied myself and looked at Taoist Xiancheng in shock. The Yasha ghost struggled to stand up from the ground, and then flew towards Taoist Xiancheng. Taoist priest Suanquan's eyes flashed with bloodthirsty scarlet, and his whole body exuded a suffocating chill. "Lu Su, you and him get out of here quickly. I'll help you hold him down. We'll split up into two groups to find the remaining three ghosts." Zhong Zhengling held a long sword in his hand and stood on the armrest, with his back to me. I wanted to say something more, but I saw Zhong Zhengling turned around, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and a vague smile appeared on his face. "Go ahead, I believe you can do it." This is the first time I see a smile on Zhong Zhengling's face. At this moment, I truly understood Zhong Zhengling. He seems indifferent, but in fact, like Su Tianqian, he is a person who is cold on the outside and hot on the inside. "Okay. Take care." Having said that, I think I am about to leave here with Tao Wen. Tao Wen also knew the importance of this matter. His master was indeed dead, but he had to prevent the Ghost Lord from being born in order to fulfill his master's last wish. In this way, Tao Wen and I left Sanking Taoist Temple together. Now, the things I face are extremely difficult. I can't help but have to deal with the 3 fierce ghosts, and I also have to deal with the 3 mission elders who have become puppets. With Tao Wen and I's strength, it's difficult to achieve this goal, so I have to find helpers.